All right, so it's a late one. We're talking Jets football, Jets FM on EOFN, our lads football network. Jan Levine joining me. Jan, appreciate you doing this on a late Saturday night. Jets preseason's over.
Uh, thank God. Well, let me phrase that. Probably the best news, and I'm stripping out the football news, which we'll get into, is for the most part nobody got materially hurt. I mean, when you come
Yes.
out of preseason, that's probably the most important thing in my mind. I mean, we'll go through. There were some roster impacts based upon some things that we saw in preseason, but nobody having really, I think, if unless I'm missing it, Greg, a material injury. It's probably the best thing we can say about what happened in spring in preseason.
Absolutely. That's a good one. I like it. And not and look, the NFL must be doing a good job. They've been taking a lot of precautions as far as the injuries. You could say what you want about canceling preseason games because of injuries. That's not the second time they've done it in the last few days. That's getting ridiculous. But everything else, they've done a good job as far as preventing the injuries, and that's the one good thing is we're not seeing a whole lot of injuries across the NFL in the preseason. But more importantly, for our New York Jets. So
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, coming into today's preseason game, clearly there was a lot of talk as to whether or not Aaron Rodgers should or should not play. You can make very salient arguments on both sides. For those of us who are old enough to remember the importance of the Puppy Bowl, the Snoopy Bowl,
oh
and
yes,
seeing what happened, guy getting blown up in the last preseason game with a game that meant absolutely nothing. That's probably in the back of most Jets fans' minds based upon seeing Rodgers there. But as we know, Rodgers played a couple series, looked pretty good. Nice back shoulder touchdown throw to Garrett Wilson.
damn
Um,
nice.
and anything you probably wanted to see and what they wanted. And I don't know if anybody's seen the interview with Tomlinson that he had done post game, but the guy was literally giddy talking about getting used to playing with Rodgers in the huddle. So all in all, a win-win situation. End result, as we know, doesn't matter at all today. Rodgers got in, got his work in, got used to playing at MetLife, even though it was a road game. He was there last week, but clearly didn't suit up. They saw the chemistry between him and Garrett Wilson, which is something we've kind of seen ever since he's signed with, traded, and signed with the team. So all in all, a win-win situation. And our one of our favorite defensive linemen had another sack, had his first sack of the preseason today.
Who was that?
Mr. Johnson,
Oh, you mean? Oh yes,
opening
absolutely. Oh, he's
opening or
been a
second
monster.
series,
He's been a monster.
blew up
So
blew up the tackle
yeah.
and got the sack.
Yeah, he's been awesome. And of course, McDonald has been awesome in some of the time that we've seen him. He's going to probably have the type of year that Johnson had last year. Hopefully he'll, have a handful of sacks, that kind of thing. But he looks like the real deal. And like you said, with avoiding injuries, this defensive line is absolutely. We haven't seen anything like this since the sack exchange. And the sack exchange
No, yeah,
was four guys.
yes. But
This is nine.
four dominant guys at the time. I mean,
Yeah,
one made the Hall of Fame.
and another that
Regardless of
should
your
have made the
view
Hall
on,
of Fame.
regardless of your view of Gastineau, you can make some arguments that based upon his overall production, he had a shot, or still might have a shot. The off field stuff
Oh yeah, that's
probably
what killed him.
impacts him, and then
Yeah,
Lyons and Salam were two pretty darn good inside guys as well.
yeah. Let's remember this is a political thing, and the writers they don't like Gastineau. They never liked him, and he had all his other personal issues. So when you have that limited amount of time, he had like a Terrell Davis career, but yeah, he didn't. He wasn't a nice guy like Davis. But anyway, fact is that was a dominant pass rush, and it looks like the Jets are going to have that again if everybody stays healthy. And by the way, this is happening without Carl Lawson. They're looking
Yep.
this good. And this is the reason when we were talking about the draft and taking McDonald. Remember, this is what we pointed out was the reason you took McDonald was because of Lawson. It was because you didn't know what you were going to get from him this year, and he probably wasn't even going to be here next year. So that's looking like it made a lot of sense. But I have to ask you, and I wonder how Jet fans would answer this. because there are a lot of Jet fans out there that listen to the media and they get a little bit too nervous. But right now, let's say that the offensive line goes to week one the way that it looks like it's going to. And we've got the depth chart up there on our lads, and that is Brown, Tomlinson, McGovern, Vera Tucker, and Becton. So let's say that that happens. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead while I do this, and you're going to be able to see it as well. All right. So let's say that's the 5. Would you still feel like you would have preferred the Jets to have drafted or been able to draft that offensive lineman? Or are you satisfied with McDonald
It's a loaded
instead?
question. That's a very loaded question. And I was actually thinking about it when you talked about McDonald. Look, I would have loved Broderick Jones. I think Broderick Jones would have been a perfect fit to provide them the kind of depth that they need. I'm not sold on Mitchell as a backup. I'm definitely not sold on Billy Turner as a backup. Tippmann is clearly dealing with an injury, though. The hope will be back on week 1. Now, whether or not they would have taken Tippmann in the second round if they had gotten Jones is questionable, right? You can probably swap the two out. They may have grabbed a
I think
different
they would have.
defensive player in the second round potentially, is probably how it would have
So what
run.
would you have done?
I
I mean, what do you right now? What would you have? What would you
I
today?
love
What do you prefer?
McDonald. I honestly probably still would want Jones.
All right.
I
So,
mean, like, look, you can make an argument on both sides of the house on that one, right? And be
well, again, that's because
and
Becton's playing.
defend both positions very easily.
What's that?
You can defend both positions very easily. If Lawson still continues to suffer from whatever he's suffering from, and he's going to miss time, and McDonald can prove to be a more than adequate
Oh,
replacement to a certain extent,
yeah.
then yeah, of course.
No, this has nothing to do with loss and long. I'm talking. This is long term. This is draft
Long
pick.
term, I would prefer Jones long term, based upon the viewpoint of what he potentially can be
Okay.
and the need at offensive line.
All right. So let's break down the roster. As a matter of fact, we've got. I can't show this article, but the Athletic and the New York Jets beat guy Zach Rosenblatt put this out today. So quarterback, he believes it's just going to be 2. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean Boyle played okay today, right through the 2 touchdown passes to Alec Erickson. Let's say the Jets are in the position, and I've talked about this, where you're gonna last year they lost 7 guys. They're very likely gonna lose the same amount this year based upon who they cut. Just given the nature of the talent on the roster, which is something we didn't see for several years. I don't see Boyle necessarily getting claimed. Feasible, yes, because there are teams who are in dire need of a quarterback. I don't think he's a needle mover. The relationship that he has with Aaron Rodgers, which is the reason why he's on this team, could sway. But if I'm going to debate between keeping a guy who I would really be upset at losing and keeping Tim Boyle, I'm keeping that guy and hoping I get Boyle through on waivers.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going with 2. All right. Running back. So he has Hall, Cook, Carter, and Abinaconda. And that means he believes that Zonovan Knight and Nick Bowden, the fullback, will be cut. Do you agree?
Well, I mean, he noted in the article, right, that Bowden is what's considered a vested veteran and therefore won't have to go through waivers, right? And we all know Carter Warren's going to end up on IR on some point in time, but he has to be on the 53-man roster to start. So I think Bowden ending up on the waiver wire is a paper move, just because of the fact they need to create space at the time. I do think Knight, his fumbling issues, is going to cost him a roster spot, but I also do believe he's going to get claimed by somebody based upon what we saw last year when he took over, when Carter struggled and when Brees Hall was injured. So yeah, I think they're going to go with 4 as well.
Yeah. So Zonovan Knight, you just you think
I'm saying
that's
Knight's going to be gone.
okay? I agree with you. I think it's going to be tough for Knight. I think the fumbling problems, which have persisted. And the other thing about Knight, nice player. It's a running back, so he's going to have more than enough opportunity. He is going to be on an NFL roster this year. There is no doubt about that. But you can take a look around the NFL. Matter of fact, I'm going to let you in on a little bit of a secret, okay? Because it's over. Our dynasty draft, pretty much. We have 3 picks left, 4 picks left, and I'm the
Two
last
picks
pick.
left. 2 picks left, and you have one of them.
Okay. And oh, did Theo go yet?
Champ goes, and then you go.
Okay.
And
Who
then we're
did
done.
Theo pick?
I don't remember,
Okay.
honestly.
So I have 2 players I want to pick. And the first guy I want to pick is LaMichael Pirine. And I'm only bringing that up in this
There's a blast from the past.
Yeah, and I'm bringing that up because he is having a great camp for the Chiefs.
He is.
And yeah, and there's a lot of talk with the injury situation, with what's his name, the rookie from last year, the Rutgers rookie.
Pacheco.
That he, and of course it's Kansas City. Wide receivers, running backs, they could all be looked to make like superstars. So anyway, the point is that Zonovan Knight will find a spot the way Pirine did, and he's gonna have a chance to have a. I think he's gonna be around the NFL for a while.
Like I said, they're gonna lose guys, right?
And that's gonna be one of them.
From the
Yep.
talent that's on the roster, they're gonna lose guys, and there are certain players that we may like better than others that unfortunately will end up
Can't keep
going
them all.
elsewhere. You just hope that they just don't come back to bite the Jets in the butt. If that happens,
well, yeah, but again, it's like but it is what it is. We're not a bad team. If we were a bad team, then I'd say it's biting us in the butt. But we're a team that's making these decisions because we want to win. We want a championship now in playoffs, and we have to let young guys go. So I don't think that's. I'm not worried about that. I hope Zonovan Knight has a good career, and I'm not going to look at it as a bad thing. Sort of like Pinnock. I'm not looking at that as, oh my God, we could have kept him. He could have been a starting safety. That's just not where we are right now. So anyway, but as far as Zonovan Knight's concerned, and Bowden, a couple of weeks ago or a week ago when he put this together, I guess after the second preseason game, he actually, I believe, had Bowden make the team. So that's a tricky one. But I just can't imagine, as tough as the roster cuts are going to be, that you're going to keep a guy like Bowden. I just don't think he's that valuable to the team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Wide receiver. He's got Wilson, Lazard, Cobb, Hardman, and he's got the 2 kids after the Corey Davis retirement, and that's Taylor and Gibson, not Brownlee. Also, Charles not making it, and then the other guys not making it as well. Do you agree with Taylor and Gibson over Brownlee?
I agree with Gibson because of his
special teams,
kickoff return, and his return ability. I think Brownlee's going to make it over Taylor.
I agree.
He hasn't had a good end of his camp. I just think from a talent base, yes.
Yep.
I do think Erickson is a guy the Jets would love to add back to the practice squad if they could. He didn't hurt himself today. I don't put an enormous amount of stock always at the last part of the preseason game, especially the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah, against
the backups are in.
Yeah.
But he definitely didn't hurt himself with the 2 touchdown catches, which could open some eyeballs. But I do think Gibson is going to make it because of his returning ability. I still think Brownlee's gonna get a shot.
Yeah, and you know what? Look, Erickson is one of these guys that I guarantee you, if he's cut, he's going to be picked up by like one of these teams like the Bills or the Patriots, and he might actually end up as a key guy for you know what I'm saying? One of these guys that ends up with 500 yards and 6 touchdowns because he has great quarterbacks playing for him or something like that if he ends up in Buffalo. Because this is the part of the career Erickson's in. He's a very good special teams performer. He's a reliable receiver, but he's not explosive and he's not a difference maker. It's interesting. We'll find out. I don't think there's any chance, but now, with Davis out and the performance tonight, I give him a little bit of a shot. Let's just say Erickson were to make it. Who would you knock out, Gibson or Brownlee?
Probably going to be Brownlee.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably. You know what the interesting thing is
You
wondering
can't
whether or not who do you think has a better chance of being
Because
claimed
Davis
off
is gone.
waivers?
Because Davis is gone, I'm a bit reluctant to use Hardman or any of the or Cobb as a returner in case, God forbid, they get hurt there. Right?
Oh yeah, forget Cobb.
I think so. You
Yeah,
need a guy who can use as a return guy, and I believe Gibson is more suited to that role. Now, remember, as we both know, just whatever the 53 is initially, sure as heck doesn't mean it's going to be the 53 come opening day, given how many changes we could see.
absolutely. Good point. I'm gonna throw a curveball. Maybe not too
Okay.
much of a curveball. I'm gonna go with Brownlee and Erickson, and
Okay.
here's the reason: Erickson can return kicks too.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go Brownlee and Erickson, but I think it can go in any of those four. You know, any sort of pattern you want to mix, it could happen, and who
Mm-hmm.
knows who's it going to be. So, all right, but we all agree Irv Charles is probably the because after Taylor had the one big catch against Cleveland, that's all. I haven't seen him do anything. You know,
Right. He's been banged up a little bit, also, I think.
and I know he has this.
Not nothing major, but
And there's only so many guys I think that you could look at and say, well, he's got a relationship with Rodgers. So I mean, that's just a couple of guys like the veterans, but any of these guys, they're not putting Malik Taylor into the 53 because he has a relationship with Aaron Rodgers. Just forget that.
right.
Okay, let's talk about the offensive. Well, tight ends first.
Want to do tight end?
Conklin, Zuma, Ruckert, and Yaboa. And he hasn't had Yaboa in until now. And that was one that every time I saw him not having Yaboa in, I was like, I don't know. I think Yaboa is going to make it because he's a really good special teams player, and that's obviously very important. And I like the way he's developed. I just don't think you give up on a guy like that. So, but look, and four tight ends, it's not weird to have four tight ends. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go with those four.
So I view Yaboa to a certain extent almost as one of our favorites who's now on the Giants, Lawrence Cager, right?
There
We
you
kept
go.
waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And then when they let him go and he moved to tight end, all of a sudden he kind of took that next step forward, right?
Yep.
So I think they love Kuntz. I think they'd like to keep him. I think as was written in the article, the hope is to slide him past waivers and put
Oh,
him on the
Kuntz is
practice
definitely
squad
in. Oh, yes,
and stash him.
absolutely. Nobody's going to
Um,
sign Kuntz to the regular roster all season. Come on.
a team that's going nowhere, never say never.
Yeah,
If you're a team that's going nowhere and you're okay with developing a guy and keeping him on your
I
roster, I
guess.
mean it's almost like in baseball with Rule 5 players, right? If you have a guy you like and you love the arm and you're a team going nowhere and you're willing to develop them all season, cognizant that you're probably not going to get a lot, but you may get a payoff down the road, that could be the move that they do.
All
I'm
right.
not saying it's going to happen, but I think the Jets will be more than likely. I think if they don't keep Boa, he's going to sign somewhere
Yep.
immediately. He's not going to slide through
Agreed.
waivers. Kuntz has a better shot of sliding through the waivers.
I spoke with John Sheeran with the Bengals. We recorded the interview yesterday, and we talked about their lack of depth at tight end. And I brought Yeboah up. I said, I tell you right now, if Yeboah were to get cut, the Bengals would love to pick up a guy like that because they just don't have any depth. They don't have any good young depth at tight end, and that's just one team.
Yep.
So yeah, all right, offensive line. And the 10 are Brown, Tomlinson, McGovern, Vera Tucker, Becton, Turner, Mitchell, Schweitzer, Tippmann, and then you've got the Carter Warren deal. So, what is Carter Warren's injury situation?
He's going to end up being placed on injury reserve, but he's got to be on the 53 man to start with for them to be able to do that.
And then what's the prognosis?
There is none.
So we haven't heard anything.
He probably end up missing the entire season. Is the likelihood?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a decent, not set in stone, but a decent likelihood. But they need to have him on the 53 man.
Okay.
And then immediately once they can, they'll put him on injured reserve.
All right. And not a big deal. It wasn't like he was going to make or break this team anyway. He needs to learn, and now he's just going to have to. I mean, wasn't going to play much, so he's going to learn anyway on the bench. So not a big deal. Okay.
Yep.
The guys. Now it's interesting. The one guy I want to bring up that he actually talked a little bit about last week. Well, I'm not sure, but if there's an 11th guy, this is the guy. And I'm telling you right now, there is no way I would be shocked if in any way, shape, or form the Jets had any interest in Tristan Colon. From what I've seen, the guy's he's just not good. All right, I
Yep.
don't see anything in this guy. So I don't know what it is. Maybe he looks better in practice than I've seen him in preseason games, but in preseason games he's just no good. So but anyway, most of these guys that they are going to more than likely let go, I'm sure a couple of these guys will make the practice squad. I guess Cologne will be one of them, but I don't really see much from those guys that are going to end up on the practice squad.
No, I agree. And the part of the reason also with Warren is it gives the main reason is by putting him on after. If you put him on before the season, he's definitely done. If you before the 53, if you put him on after the 53, he potentially could be brought back this year. So it gives him the optionality is kind of important, just given the fact as we've seen injuries most certainly occur. And for all we know, if he progresses quickly on the practice squad, etc., maybe he ends up getting in down the road in case they need him.
Okay.
Doubtful, but gives you the option.
Next up, on the defense, defensive ends, or yeah, let's just talk about the way he has broken down. Defensive end: Lawson, Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, McDonald, Huff, and Clemens. Of course, we all agree with that.
Yep.
Missing the cut, the one guy I think who will definitely be on the practice squad is Deslin Alexander. I don't know about Holmes. I'm not sure whether or not how much they like him, but yeah, there's really nothing to talk about there.
Yep. Agreed.
Defensive tackle: Quinn Williams, Al Woods, Jefferson, and Solomon Thomas, who actually made some plays, which is nice to see. Missing the cut. Wow, Tanzel Smart. Hector made a big play a couple weeks ago, and Spencer, but yeah, Tanzel Smart. Wow, that could be interesting, but that just shows you the depth on the team. If Tanzel Smart is let go, he will be picked up.
Probably. I mean, teams need defensive linemen. I mean, Smart's probably one of those guys who's borderline made some plays, but not consistent enough. But yeah, I think he's that'll remove one of the stars on Hard Knocks last week. But that's just given the nature of what they have, not overly surprising.
I think if there's a position on this team that they are really going to try to find a way to get one more guy on, I think that from what we've talked about so far, I think he might be it, especially how valuable the defensive line position is to this defense. So, all
I
right.
think a lot of it's going to depend on the extent of what's going on with Lawson.
Yeah, that's true. If he needs to sit out for a little while, or also, by the way, it depends too on some of the things that we're talking about as far as some of the guys that like does Jeboa make the team, and if he doesn't, maybe there's a spot. All right,
Right.
linebacker: Mosley, Williams, Sherwood, and Barnes. The big name not making it is Surratt. We talked about Surratt before. I mean, he references Salah saying how much he loved him on Hard Knocks and all that. Salah loves everybody, by the way, so I wouldn't take too much into that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just think they've developed Surratt nicely. I'm going to find it. I think they're going to want to keep Surratt somehow.
I think he ends up making the team. Although, again, Surratt is probably one of those guys that's a borderline last cut, depending on what other decisions are pending. But he's clearly on the cut line. It all depends on kind of who else they want to keep in terms of other positions. So I think I think it wouldn't shock me if it goes either way.
Yeah.
I'm not leaning one way or the other. I think he has a better than 50-50 shot at making the lineup. But if you tell me he doesn't, I wouldn't be overly surprised.
Yeah, and another player that'll be picked up immediately. So,
Yep.
yeah, it's defense. Salah, it's one of those players that I think every year there's a player or two that the GM has to like do what he can to keep the guy when the coach says how much he wants him.
Yep.
And Surratt might be one of those guys. Okay. And then finally in the secondary, at corner, you've got Gardner, Reed, Carter, Hardy, special teams, Bryce Hall. And of course, Eccles will be back after 1 week suspension. So Jimmy Moreland, I believe, is the only guy that was trying to battle for a spot with Bryce Hall. But yeah, I kind of see Bryce Hall because Moreland, anybody's, you can pick up Jimmy Moreland's every week. Bryce Hall, we don't really have any love for him at this point. But again, I just want to see. He seemed to play okay today. I just would like to see him make one significant play that might boost his confidence again. And Brandon Eccles is having a hell of a preseason after a few penalties in that Cleveland game. I mean, this guy is making plays left and right in practice too.
Yep, punctuated with his interception return today.
Yeah.
So good, gives him confidence, unfortunately, going into the suspension, but he'll be back here after a week and then they'll have to find somebody else to let go. So I will say Hall's spot is tenuous at best.
Yes, I think his spot. I agree. If it's a simple Eccles for Hall, then yeah, there's. I don't think there's any question that they'd rather have Chaz Surratt than Bryce Hall,
Yep.
something like that. All right, and at safety you got Whitehead, Adams, Amos, Davis, and Dean. On the pup is Bernard Converse. Missing the Cut Waters. Yeah, Waters ain't going to make it. So Dean is the question here. I understand how much they like him. He definitely is a nice little physical kid. Seems to be one of those guys that you'd like to develop, especially because you would think that Amos is a 1 year guy. And you could easily Dean, you drop him, and then all of a sudden, Amos is gone, and then Dean is playing in the NFL for the next 10 years. So this is going to be a very interesting one. But that does make 10 guys, and that's pretty much what happens. You got to have 10 DBs. So Dean might be able to make it. But then the question is, what happens? Does he have like a trial basis kind of deal, and then they have to make a decision when Bernard Converse comes back?
Well, I mean, as Rosenblatt talked about, and you mentioned also, right? They had Pinnock and they let Pinnock go. And look, I would love to have Pinnock. I'm not sure if I agree with the decision last year, but if you think Dean is a guy who can develop, right? We talked about Dean and Davis seem to be the two guys that were battling for one roster spot. But if Davis, who's actually played better lately and is a good special teams
Yeah.
player, and if you're concerned that by letting go Dean, he's going to get claimed, and as you mentioned, could develop into if not a starter, a guy who is going to get a substantive amount of playing time. That's one of those guys you find a way to keep on your roster and move somebody else. And so that's why I think he's got a better than even shot to be able to make this roster when the 53 are determined.
Yeah, I was just double checking his size. Yeah, he has good size, and he is physical. So I could definitely see him making the team at least temporarily.
Yep.
Because look, even if at some point, even when the season begins, within the first couple of weeks, guys are going to get hurt. You might even get one guy that all of a sudden is out for a couple of months or a month or is out for the year, and you just don't want to lose guys. And then all of a sudden you could have found a roster spot for him a week or two later. Special teams, and nothing is going to change. You got really quality veterans there in Zerline, Morstead, and Hennessy. I just want to keep my fingers crossed that by next year, what's his name, the kid from Buffalo. They're still around, and
Yeah, I'm
maybe
surprised that we talked about him at our first show. Nobody signed him yet.
no. So something's going on there. I don't know what it is, but hopefully he'll be around next year because the Jets are definitely sold on the veteran Morstead. And hopefully, when you're trying to make the playoffs, you're trying to win big games, and you want to win big games in the postseason. This is exactly what you need, and you need these types of veterans to come through for you in the clutch. And they're set up nicely with these three guys: the kicker, the punter, and the long snapper.
Matt Ariza is his name.
There you go, Matt Ariza. That's right. All right, so that is going to wrap it up. Now we've got that extra week to wait, which I think is pretty cool. We don't have to. Now, the cut down day is what?
Tuesday, I thought, isn't it?
Yes, Tuesday.
I think it's Tuesday.
Yep. So Tuesday's cut down day. I don't remember. I don't really think there's any way the Jets, and I don't think that this happened last year, right? When the Jets lost all those guys, they never picked anybody up, right? They didn't have any spots for anybody, right? I don't think they did.
I'd have to go back and look. Nobody's resonating off the top of my head.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Up,
But
the interesting part is presuming Kuntz makes it through, right? and we know Bernard Converse is on the PUP list. Pretty much all the draft picks from this year will make the roster again, right?
Oh no, not the tight end.
If Kuntz makes it through
Oh,
to the
if
practice
Kuntz would.
squad,
Oh
though.
yeah, if he were to make it, but there's just I can't imagine he makes it. I just
No,
can't.
if he makes it through, if in other words, if they let him go, but he's
On the
on the
practice
fenced up on the
squad, yeah,
practice squad,
yeah,
right?
that's it. Yeah, hmm
Right. That's what I
everybody.
mean. That
Yeah,
that if he makes through, that they'll end up somewhere within the roster and the practice squad. They'll have kept all the
yep,
guys they drafted this year again.
yep. By the way, watching Sherwood play and Barnes play, I'm not so sure I see a difference. I want to be honest with you.
Sherwood just knows the system better. That's all.
Yeah, and I just now I don't know what they were doing today, but I don't know if you noticed like that touchdown drive by the Giants. It's like I don't know what they were like in this zone, and everything that was in the zone was like kind of towards him, and he was like letting everybody catch it. And it was 3rd and 10. He's giving guys 15-yard cushions, and look, it's preseason, and they're not planning for this, but I don't know. We just haven't seen anything from Sherwood in the preseason yet that leads me to believe that we're in good shape there. But once the lights turn on and we game plan, we're going to find out pretty quick.
They
So
also could go with an extra safety and go with 2 linebackers also, right? So they could
absolutely, you could bring
do
Adrian
a
Amos into the game.
4-2-5 alignment, and we'll see what
Yes,
happens.
yeah, we might see a lot of that. We might see Amos playing a lot more.
And you could see Dean in that thing also because
You
he's
could,
big.
yes. So, all right. Well, look, Tuesday's cut down day. Not sure what our situation is going to be as far as broadcasting between now and the beginning of the season, but we will be on the air at some point. Jan and I will preview the season. We've got the extra day too, being in the Monday night game. So that's kind of cool. Obviously, it's going to be just a crazy atmosphere. It's Monday night. It's 9/11. It's the last game of the week. So we got to wait until it's going to drive all the Jet fans crazy, but it's going to gear them up, and it's a night game. And it's going to be crazy, but we'll talk about that the next time we do our show when we preview the season. So Jan, I appreciate you taking your time out on a Saturday night to help me to get this through so we can make it available to everybody first thing on Sunday. And again, I'm not sure when we're going to talk, but we'll talk before the season kicks off.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right. Also, I want to remind everybody that we will have more NFL preseason videos, including our NFL preview show with Mark Lawrence and Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post. And that is going to be on Thursday when we preview the NFL season predictions and all sorts of cool stuff. And all our other interviews that we have lined up, including the ones that are in the can and already on the channel from our preseason videos. You can check them out here on the channel. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you again next time on Jets FM on the OFN.